Your brand may be staying on top of current trends, but are you agile enough to stay relevant, resilient, and successful as customers, competition, and the world continues to change at a breakneck pace? I'm thrilled to share the newly revised version of my first book, The Agile Brand. I'm calling it The Agile Brand Revisited. It's been updated to reflect our continually changing world, and it provides 7 principles that form the backbone of an agile brand, offering detailed insights and actionable steps for incorporating them into your business strategy. This is the book that started it all, and I'm excited to share it with you. It's now available in print and digital formats and available everywhere. Learn more by going to the Agile Brand Guide website at www.agilebrandguide.com. Welcome to Season 4 of The Agile Brand with Greg Kihlstrom, where we discuss business agility through customer experience, employee experience, and digital transformation. I'm your host, Greg Kihlstrom. The Agile World podcast is brought to you by TechSystems, an industry leader in full-stack technology services, talent services, and real-world application. For more information, go to techsystems.com. To read more about the topics discussed on this show, you can go to my website at gregkihlstrom.com and read my latest articles or get a copy of my latest book, Meaningful Measurement of the Customer Experience, now available on Amazon and other retailers. Today we're going to talk about the continued importance of employer branding and why it is so important to be intentional about documenting and codifying culture, processes, and the way internal communications are handled. To help me discuss this topic, I'd like to welcome Roy Abdo, CEO of Digital Revamp. Roy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Greg.
Yeah, looking forward to talking with you. And so why don't we start by just give us a little background about yourself and what you're doing at Digital Revamp.
I'm the CEO and owner of Digital Revamp marketing agency, and my background is all in communication and marketing. I worked about 7 years in media productions, and I was a consultant for about another 4 years at 3.5, 4 years at Gallup, where I did all their digital media and digital media integration. And right now, I'm leading Digital Revamp. We're about 30 people that have all communication backgrounds, from video to content to writing to scripting to strategy to research to analytics. And we help our clients tell their stories online from an employment brand perspective and then from a thought leadership perspective. That's the kind of work we do now.
Wonderful. Well, let's dive in here and get started by talking about employer branding and why it's so important to be intentional about this. So, how would you first define employer branding, and what is its role within an organization?
When we get approached to do this kind of work as an employment brand, the main thing that I keep discussing with my clients is over 80%, it's about 86% of people go online and read a lot about the company culture, the reviews, the active listings they have, the Glassdoor reviews, their About Us page, their Join Us page. So pretty much every 10 people you're hiring, 8 of them are going on your website to checking those informations. And if you don't have those informations, it's super hard to get to know you, as an employment, to get to know the kind of culture you have. So the work we do is we work with companies and executives on documenting their culture, and then putting a face, putting it into words, putting it into actions, putting it into a process. So when you're trying to get the top talent, those people will go on your website and understand more of who you are, where you're trying to go, what you're trying to build, and then get to see if that's something they align with. And the effect of it is people have higher retention, they have better alignment, specifically even when they do join the company. Because think of it, so you join it, I always refer to it, when you start working, it's like kind of dating. You're trying to get the company, they're trying to get to know you more, and the more documentation and the more literature about your company and your ethics and your values and your compass and all this kind of stuff is written, the better you have that relationship building happening.
You mentioned things like the company website and publicly available sites like Glassdoor and others. This sounds really straightforward, right? But why do organizations keep missing opportunities to work on these internal communications?
I mean, from the thing is like what I've discovered is lack of ownership. It's just not defined role, because HR put it as their IT people. The IT folks puts it on the marketing folks. The marketing folks puts it on the HR folks. It's just kind of like it doesn't have an ownership at the moment. And I think more and more companies, we're seeing it, they're creating the employment brand manager, which pretty much is the ambassador of this section of the site, this kind of story. So I would say, because it's an evolution of, of our current media and current communication, it has not been taken care of.
What are some effective ways that you've seen, given your work with organizations, whether these are strategies or tactics or some combination? What are some ways that organizations can use to engage their internal audiences with their brand?
So the one key things that we work on is for our customers is we help make a voice for the executives and the brand itself. And we're talking about as simple as social media updates on the company page about what's happening. We're talking as simple as starting a newsletter, internally for the company that pretty much aligns everyone where they were going, where we're trying to build, who's building what. You'll be surprised seeing, the companies, enterprises, like not having this kind of alignment and not knowing what's going on. And then the third one is just thinking about the executives of the companies are the biggest salesperson in the company, because their first client is their internal customers, is their internal staff. If those staff are not buying their vision would not get implemented and would not have the effect, and they would not serve the customers they're trying to serve. So the way we explain it is we first start with the element of storytelling and the element of the belief system that a company have, a CEO have, the vision they're aspiring to go, the vision where they want to go, and then we translate that into pieces of content that we disseminate and we distribute, and we engage using those pieces of content across different social media channels. We're talking about a LinkedIn page of a company. We're talking about Instagram page of a company. We're talking about the LinkedIn page of his LinkedIn profile of a CEO. And those pieces of content, if they become following a schedule, systematic, like in a sense where there's a habit, there's a routine of doing it, is going to build enough repository of content that when this new person is about to join the company, they would literally look up that company website, that company's blog, that company's profile on LinkedIn, and there's going to be enough relationship building material on that page to get them acquainted and already start feeling the belonging, or and associate themselves with the alignment of the vision where the company is trying to go.
How is success measured in what you do?
The main successful metric we look at is you will see happier and happier a recruitment manager. You'll see happier and happier HR professional. You'll see a higher engagement internally in the company. You'll see, so the metrics we look at is the reach of those posts, if it's happening, and we're not obsessed. Like everyone sometimes gets so obsessed. I mean, everyone, a lot of people get so obsessed about the volume of reach. But if you're not reaching the right people, that doesn't matter what number you have. You might have a million views, but if you don't have the conversion you need, what's the point of those million views? So what we stress on is what people see and how is that helping that hiring manager to get the top talent? How is that helping that CEO being recognized as a thought leader? So whenever you're talking, our measurement happens if an executive, we're working with him on his brand or his vision, if he comes back to us like, you know what, I was having this conversation and someone saw this post on my LinkedIn and it brought that discussion, that for me is a success, because that conversation would not have had happened if you did not have that LinkedIn update on your profile. And the same thing with the hiring manager. If when he's trying to recruit a potential candidate, that candidate mentions anything from social media, that is success, because that's another piece of conversation that did not exist before having that kind of content on there.
How much of your work is focused on? It sounds like there's a lot focused on external candidates for jobs. How much is focused on internal, existing employees as a word of mouth mechanism and things like that?
The thing is, once you start posting those posts on their social media aligned with the vision and the mission, we're not talking about selling products or services. We're focusing solely on like the core of the company, the belief system of the company. A lot of those clients, sorry, a lot of those employees would actually share them on their own social media. So think about the effect that's happening where you've had this idea that you're working on this project. Let's take for example a client who is a government contractor. They just want a contract helping the Department of Labor with certain data project, right? This is a like really important work serving the citizens of our country. And but those people have no mechanism on how to tell the story, those people working on this project, because they're actually working on the project delivering the solution. We come in and we turn that into in an infographic, a visual representation, an impact metric that we can tell a story, and we post it on their social media. That person working on that project now has a piece of content that he could reshare on his profile, talking about the work he's doing. And imagine how much more belonging he would feel, because he's part of the tribe that's building this kind of story, this kind of impact on the citizen, and working along his peers and his friends on delivering that solution.
Yeah, I mean, it's, and I had a conversation recently about this as well. Is just, I think part of branding is teaching a vocabulary that you not only wish people would use, but that they can use to be able to basically speak the same language as one another at a company. So I mean, I think that's it's a really important thing to be able to do internally, just so people can even just articulate the things that they may be feeling, but just articulate it in a way that other people can relate to and agree with, and stuff like that. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, think like we have hard time with words. We have a hard time with descriptions. We have a hard time creating those words, coming up with those words. So I think any company that has an aspiration to grow, any company that becomes a brand, because brand without words do not exist. Think about right now, if I tell you Nike, you just think of their slogan immediately on top of your head. So they
Right.
own that word in your head, and they are going to be living in there for a long, long time. So the idea that I always mention to executives and our clients is, if you're not creating the common language, the internal language, the internal wording, the internal principles that you would like to use, it's never going to be created by people, because it's not their forte. They're not thinking about it every single day. And even like, it's not, I would say it's an evolutionary process. When I think about it, is your belief system that you start with at let's say a company, you're like a 10-year-old, now you're at your year 20. You're thinking it could be changing, it could be adjusted, it could be shifted, because your business requirements are shifting. For example, now we're seeing more and more conversations about diversity, equity, and inclusion. This was not a big belief system in a lot of companies we worked with. You can see the immediate shift of adjusting their belief system, making it a core value in the company, belief system that they want to drive, and attracting those talents, showing that they believe in that. So we see it. I see it personally evolving, and I see it growing based on the current needs and the kind of like the evolution of the media that's happening, and what is the need. For example, another client we were working with, they were talking about diversity in the workplace, or belonging in the workplace. And we looked at their executives, and they're all the same color, the same look of people, and how
Right.
you can attract a top talent, or and they were all pretty much men, to be honest. So it's like, how are you going to attract another person on there when all your C people, the 7 people you have on your website, they're the same exact look of individuals. How would another person feel that, yeah, that they're accepting other people? I'm gonna belong here. I'm gonna make it my company. I'm gonna grow into this. So I would say these kind of conversations shift depending on the company. Like, once we do an assessment, we could understand more and more how the companies, they probably have those different individuals. They just don't think of putting them on their website. And they probably have people from, they probably had do have I mean, most companies have a belief system to be in business for at least 5 to 7 years, but they just haven't taken time to document it.
Yeah, and I think this goes back to the conversation about the glass doors and these other and social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever platforms people use. Those have kind of democratized people's ability to talk about work or whatever, but there's still a critical role for branding, and in this case employer branding, to play. Is that we're not in the Mad Men days of one-way communication by any means, but there's still, if you don't put the message out there that you want people to hear, they're going to either, to your earlier point, they may not be able to articulate it well, or someone else may go out there and kind of control the message. And so, not having a seat at the table, so to speak, to at least put out the initial ideas that you want to convey. And then, to your last point about diversity, actually walking the walk, and stuff like that, as far as actually having a diverse group of leadership and showing it and stuff like that as well. I think it all works together.
Yeah, Greg. I mean, you made a great point. Like, as most, if you as a company, you're not joining the conversations, you're never gonna be in the conversation. So, a lot of we've seen companies. I've seen till today. A lot of major companies. They're not taking it seriously in terms of becoming part of the conversation. They think of just being silent. Being silent is the better way to be. And the reality is, you have to have your voice, your belief system, your drive. Otherwise, people can associate whatever they want with your brand, whatever they want with your message, and you're not gonna have a part of. You're not gonna be part of the conversation. Like, an additional thing I always stress on is the executives of any company, the drivers of those any companies, they need to be part of the conversation using the same engagement language, the same rhetoric that the language, the words that they want to distribute on their content, in their commenting, in the conversation happening. So, for example, let's say right now we're working with the same idea of that government contracting working with the Department of Labor. The CEO, whenever he sees a conversation around labor, he should be joining the conversation using that hashtag of the conversation tracking and mentioning the one of the core beliefs in our company is X, Y, and Z. Bringing that to be part of the conversation and not only just passively listening to what's happening out there and thinking he cannot be part of fixing that. And we see it actually, some of our executives we work with, whenever we give them that language, that document that language for them, they become more comfortable joining a conversation and becoming part of it because they have their back, they have something in their hand that enables them to say the words they need to say in the right place in the right time.
Yeah, it's it takes branding out of solely the hands of marketing, and these executives and leaders, they're getting media training for when they're getting interviewed or something, but they're not necessarily getting social media training or things like that in all cases. And so yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, I think it's so necessary just to reinforce it on all channels, in every, even in internal meetings, in quarterly internal reviews, like all of those kinds of things, just continually reinforcing that stuff. Because yeah, employees at an organization, even the most well-intentioned ones, and I believe most employees are well-intentioned, they're not trained in branding like you and I may be, or they're not trained in those things, and so they need repetition. And they're certainly willing to adopt it. They just they need a nudge, and they need a little help to do so.
You said a great point, Greg. Repetition is key. If you're not repeating your message is going to be forgotten. Even though you might know the information, see the information, and in your mind you might be tired of it because you're actually in this information every day. But for the outside world, that's the first time they see this information. So, for example, your core belief, you might be posting about them the first quarter. I'm like, oh, we hear it a lot of the times when we work with executives and people on our clients. Like, no, we posted about this last quarter. I'm like, yeah, we did, but this new quarter, this content could be seen by another person that has not seen you. You're like, you have to be repeating your message over and over, and you have to get comfortable on not getting tired of it and start adding different spin on it, like, I mean, maybe a story along the way, maybe a data along the way, maybe a personal story, maybe a staff story that reinforces that core belief system of your company. Otherwise, it's going to be super hard to compete with all the labor shortages we have right now. Like, you know how this great resignation is happening, and
Yeah.
it's super hard to find talent. So why on earth would someone want to work for you when you don't even they don't even know why what you stand for, because there's so many companies out there right now, and there's so many people, companies needing people. If you really want to attract the top people, they need to see the vision that you have, then they need to have the trust that you have in that company.
So one last question before we wrap up here. What are some of the like pain points or telltale signs that someone needs to rethink their employer branding? What are some of the pain points that you see with clients coming to you?
The pain point is lack of documentations and taking the words as serious as they should. So we see it all the time. We specifically work with companies who are established because they already have a belief system and it's already in place, but it's not documented. And a lot of sometimes actually disconnect happens. They do have a belief system, they have a culture value, they have principles on their website, but they're not being adopted. So we want to be as authentic as we can. And there's, the current culture and the aspirational culture, and it's a marriage of both. So the challenge we have sometimes is like their culture is this way, but they want to be in a whole different direction, 180-degree better. And we want to be authentic and real to that other person to attract them. So it's a kind of, we have to find the balance of, okay, here's your belief system for this year, and by next year we could revisit those five other principles that you have in there, to make sure we're, when you're attracting a person, they're like, oh my god, your website said this, but in reality it's that. So kind of like that's one of the challenges we see. How do we mitigate it is through, coming in the middle, having that conversation, and then being honest with the executives whenever we interviewed them, of like, okay, so we interview the executive, but also we interview the HR professionals, we interview the marketing people, and try to bring everybody aligned on, here's what you guys think you are, here's what you actually are, and here's where we can be in the middle, and the aspiration of to go to that direction. Is that helpful? Did I answer your question? I felt I went on a different tangent.
Yeah, no, I think that's perfect. And yeah, Roy, thanks so much for joining the show. For those listening, what's the best way for them to keep up with you and what you're doing?
So I'm active on Instagram and LinkedIn. My name on LinkedIn is RoyAbdo, Apple Bravo Delta Oscar, and the same thing on my Instagram is Roy.abdo, and of course, like my email is Roy@digitalrevamp.com, and I publish a lot of content on Instagram and LinkedIn. And we have like our obviously our company newsletter and such, that anyone who's need any help on branding or questions. But one thing I did not mention, part of the stuff we do is some of the companies, we build the training for them on the employment brand, and becoming a better partner for your executives on how to build that part. So some of the clients, we do, after we do the one-time setup for them of the content, we actually just help them, train them on how to keep it alive and create the content for it, and take it to the next level that they aspire to.
Well, again, I'd like to thank Roy Abdo, CEO of Digital Revamp, for joining the show. Thanks for listening to The Agile World with Greg Kilstrom. See you next week. Thanks again for listening to the Agile Brand with Greg Kilstrom podcast, brought to you by Tech Systems. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to subscribe on your podcast channel of choice and leave us a rating so that others can find the show more easily. You can access more episodes of the show at www.theagilebrand.show. To get a copy of my latest book, Meaningful Measurement of the Customer Experience, visit my website at gregkilstrom.com. Until next week, stay agile.